I want to thank all you people for coming today, and I also would like to thank the Walk Committee. It's AKA our library group. That's alphabetical: Diane Bishop, Kathy Briggs, Carol Robinson, Jim Stewart, and Mark Wolfgang, for all the help with this. Kellen Gailey, our Dansville, Michigan Historical Society president, and Sherry Foster, say your name now.
Michaelowitz, Sherry Michaelowitz.
From the village board, for being here today with the cemetery records and other materials about Fairview Cemetery. Angela St. Hamont and her drama class students who will be doing the presenting of the people. If it's still raining when we're through here, we'll just bring them in here and do it here. So keep your fingers crossed that it is. The articles displayed on the tables are some of the donations that we have been given that we're inventorying and cataloging from the past year. The village has given us permission to put displays in the rental hall, so we're trying to get some display cases to use for a museum. Any donations you'd like to give today will go towards that. Before Kellen and Sherry talk, I would like to make one statement. The information for people honored here was prepared by the Walk Committee members. We strive to be as accurate as possible as what we can about the honorees. Some errors may occur, but they were not intentional. Our goal is to inform you for the things that the person did between the dates on their stone and contribute to the area, making our local history. And I'm sorry about the lighting, but when you get a chance, it's not so crowded. You may want to look at some of these displays around here. Now Kellen's going to tell you a little bit about our society, and then Sherry's going to tell you what she's got up there on the table. Now, if it's still raining afterwards, we'll just set our kids up in here, and they'll tell you their stories.
Thank you all for coming to Dansville, Michigan Historical Society's first cemetery walk at Fairview Cemetery. The society was officially founded in May of 2017, which happened to be the 150th year since the incorporation of the village of Dansville. We started as a Facebook group, though, in 2010, from a dream of a college student to an official nonprofit organization 7 years later. Our mission, though, is to promote and engage people in the rich history of Dansville. We focus on Dansville and its surrounding area to collect items from the past and hold meetings to share the information and memorabilia gathered. The difference, though, with our historical societies, we've tried to modify it from the traditional model of a historical society and venture into more a virtual world, because so many of our members have moved out of this. Even if they're not out of the state, they're out of the area. So we have some that are even out of the state. And we want to make sure that we're able to connect with everyone that is interested in our past. As Connie mentioned, an exciting new piece to our society is a partnership with the village, where we'll be putting display cases in to share some of the collections we have. With that, we're always looking for more items, and the nice part to that is if you'd like to donate a physical item, we're more than happy. But if you don't want to part with your item, we'll help you scan it, and it'll be more of a digital donation. We would, again, like to thank the Dansville Drama Club for their enthusiasm and participation today. All of you are in for a real treat. We'd also like to thank some of the local businesses for helping sponsor this event, which is Briggs Mechanical, Cleary Fence, H&H Construction, JRJ Companies, Swan Fuel, and Sunshine Products. It's because of support not only from our community members but businesses that we're able to do things like this, but again, keep the Historical Society going and keep that interest. We'd like to thank you for coming today, and then I'll hand it over to Sherry.
I'm the clerk for the Village of Dansville. I'm also the cemetery sexton. So I have all the records for the cemetery, including the original incorporation book of this cemetery here. And this is what I'm going to talk about here. Some of the wording comes right straight out of this, written in the hand quill script. This is from 1850. On May 11th, 1850, a group of men, founding fathers of the village of Dansville, Samuel Crossman, Daniel Weston, Hampton Granger, William Whipple, and Marvin Carr, declared themselves proprietors of the Ingham Center Burying Grounds. In accordance with Michigan law, statute 1846, they had to file a request with the local justice of the peace, who just so happened to be Samuel Crossman, for a warrant to be issued to one of the proprietors authorizing that person to call a meeting for the purpose of organizing a burying society. The warrant was issued and the meeting date of May 15, 1850 was set. At that public meeting, these 5 individuals formed a society, electing Samuel Crossman the president, Daniel Weston the clerk, H.L. Strong as treasurer, Mr. Clark and Mr. Granger and Mr. Whipple and Mr. Carr all were trustees of the society. This society began the process for internment at the cemetery, known then as Ingham Center Burying Grounds and now as Fairview Cemetery. These original members were setting up a perpetual care system that set aside a portion of the cost of a cemetery lot for maintenance of that lot for life. So each member purchased a space in the cemetery or several spaces in the cemetery to start that fund. You'll find many of these people in this cemetery here, as well as many of their family members, all buried out here in this cemetery. A lot of the costs for these lots were $1. So 50 cents went into perpetual care to take care of the lifetime of that piece of property. Their amounts are in here listed, everything's listed in here. So Dansville history lies here in this cemetery and is brought back to life with these cemetery walks and through the Dansville Historic Society. I thank you all for attending today and hope this sparks an interest in you to continue to relive the past.
Welcome to Fairview Cemetery. I am familiar with this cemetery since I was the undertaker here in this town. Let me tell you my story. My name is Isaac William Wilson Moe, although some might know me as Ike. I was born in August on the 1st in 1860 in Woodstock, Ulster County, New York. My parents were John Moe and Hannah Wolven Moe. I didn't know much about my father since when I was 2 on August 18, 1862, he enlisted in the Civil War. He signed up in Kingston, Ulster, New York, as part of the New York 112th Infantry at the age of 35. Sadly, he died a prisoner of war on June 25, 1864, in Andersonville Prison in Anderson, Georgia. Besides me and my mother, he left behind my brothers William, age 7, and my brother John, age 2. My mother did remarry. She married Peter Dubus, with whom she gave me my sister Julia. I came to Michigan in 1877 when I was 17. I lived in Chelsea before moving to Dansville, where I worked as a farm laborer. I met Lucy Ide, and we were married on January 30th, 1881, in Stockbridge. We moved to Weberville for 3 years, where I worked in a sawmill. Then we moved to Detroit. There I followed painting and decorating. But I really missed Dansville, so we returned after being gone just 1 year. I worked in a meat market. Then I worked in Ebert Rice, that you will meet today, worked for Ebert Rice that you will meet today, as a clerk in his general store. I kept that position as the store changed hands several times, finally becoming a partner of the E.A. Densmore for 2 years. I gave up that business to purchase the undertaking business of Mrs. Martha Richards, which I had for 18 years. I took great pride in my work. It is said that with my tender heart and affectionate disposition, I made friends wherever I was. My tender heart also went out to little children. I so enjoyed taking them for long rides in my horse and buggy, or sleigh rides during the winter. In return, they would often bring me flowers and entertain me with music. The interests of my home, town, and country were important to me. I was ever ready with money and time for the betterment of my community and mankind. I was elected chairman of the Red Cross when it was organized here on May 11, 1917. With my hard work during storms and cold, I succeeded in organizing 14 school districts as auxiliaries to the Dansville Red Cross. I continued this work until my failing health caused me to resign. I was also an honored member of the Masonic Order, member of the Eastern Stars, the IOOF, Grange, Modern Woodmen, and Methodist Episcopal Ladies' Aid. Although I never sought office, I was also a member of the Republican Party, always willing to help my friends. I was always quick to see the humor in things. They say I was genial and generous. Maybe that was why I endeared as an undertaker. Even I was getting close to my final days, and my bright sunny nature shone through. So in November of 1918, I left this earth and my loving wife. I left my legacy of a love and tenderness to her and many friends.
Good afternoon. Let me introduce myself. I am Rosella Aseltine Coy. I was born May 24th, 1825 in Canada, the second of 11 children born to Henry and Rosette Wheeler Aseltine. 7 of my siblings and myself were born in Canada, and then my last 3 siblings here in Michigan. We came to Michigan Territory in 1835. Michigan wouldn't be a state until 1837. We settled first in Washtenaw County. My father was a stonemason. He, along with his brother John, worked on the first building built on the University of Michigan's campus. They then came to Ingham County. I met Alfred Coy here in Ingham Township. He was born 1827 in New York, by the way. He is 2 years younger than me. His parents were Justice and Elizabeth Clements Coy. He had 7 known siblings. 5 of his siblings were from the marriage of Justice and Elizabeth, and then 2 half-sisters from the second marriage with Elizabeth Taylor, Emma Taylor. Alfred and I were married September 5th, 1847 in Ingham Township by John Torrey, Justice of Peace. The marriage was witnessed by Henry and Peter Aseltine, my father and brother. Alfred was 20 and I was 22. It was here that we first worked at farming in the area. It was also where our 4 daughters were born. Martha was born in 1848. Next was Mary, born in 1853. Then Ella, born in 1860, and our last child, Esther, came along in 1863. Martha grew up and married Levi Swan. Mary married DeWitt Corwin, and Esther married Charles Osborne. Sadly, our baby Ella died in 1862 at 2 years of age. With the Civil War in 1861, along came doing whatever we could for our country. Alfred thought he could help by joining the Army. He reported June 1863 for registration for the Civil War draft at age 37. Unfortunately, he was released because of bad chronic rheumatism. Now that the war was over in 1866, we moved to Dansville. After many years of farming, we decided trying to run a hotel. So we purchased the Union Hotel that had been built in 1856 and completed in 1857 by David Fox. There was also another hotel in that town built in 1860 to 1861 by Simon Hendricks, who was also a gunmaker, and Mr. Wiggins, called the National. Can you imagine this little town having 3 hotels? It sure was a busy place. In 1866, Alfred was elected treasurer of Ingham Township. Between running the hotel and being treasurer, he was kept pretty busy. The Union Hotel proved to be very popular in the area. A newspaper article published on February 3rd, 1887, about a visit to Dansville businesses read as, Mr. A.B. Coy of the Union Hotel, where our fingers are warmed and our pony carefully tended, appears to be receiving a good deal of patronage from the traveling public. He has a neat, cozy, homelike place and knows how to make it attractive. Not only was it cozy and homelike, there were many social events held at the hotel. Events like donation parties for the area churches and their pastors. I think you call them fundraisers today? One such event was held on February 14, 1870, which earned a whopping $174 for Reverend C.B. Abbott and the Village Baptist Church. And then there was another that raised $75 for Reverend Holt and the Methodist Church. At this time, that was an extreme amount of money. I wish I could tell you how much that would be in your time. Oh, and the dances and other social events that were hosted at the hotel were many. Just as an example, a Harvest Fest dance was held on July 26, 1877, and attended by many farmers and community members. A frolicking good time had by all. You won't believe this, but on March 6, 1880, our hotel hosted a wrestling match. It was announced that the match would be between Mark Smith and Mr. Adams of New York. The match was held at our hotel for door money. Of course there were politics back in our day. Our hotel was honored to hold the Democratic caucus in March 1887 at 1. Now that brought in a crowd. Our last home here in Dansville was built after Alfred purchased Lot 7 on Mason Road just east of Grave Street, now known as Grove Street, a block west of the hotel. By golly, the house still stands today. You may remember the Grunwalds that lived there in the 50s and 60s, or as a place where Pat Reisner lives now today. After leaving the hotel, Alfred wanted to keep busy, so he worked in several different jobs. He enjoyed selling goods to people for different employers. Alfred continued to work up right until he passed away. His last employer was Levi Gear, who was a merchant and the postmaster at the Dansville post office. Alfred's health was declining, and he had not been in good health for several years. Remember, he was turned down to fight the Civil War because he had bad chronic rheumatism. On January 23, 1886, in Dansville, he died at the age of 59 years old. His cause of death was pneumonia and neuralgia of the heart. Since he was a Mason, meaning a member in high standing with the Masonic, Alfred was buried here with full Masonic honors. With Alfred's passing, I became his widow. He left me in his will all of his properties and assets as long as I remained his widow. If I were to remarry, I would have to give it all back. And then the remaining estate would be divided between our 3 living daughters. Just to give you some idea of his worth, Lansing City Directory listed Alfred's estate at $1,600 in 1888. I remained a widow and lived on here in Dansville without my dear Alfred for just over 30 years. I passed away Saturday, April 24th at 1909 in my residence in the village on Grove Street. My death was caused by a stroke of paralysis I had suffered on the previous Wednesday. I had lived 85 years, which was quite a long time in that day. I am buried here beside my beloved Alfred, 3 of our daughters, our parents, 9 of my siblings, and many generations of other Asseltine relatives are also buried here in Fairview Cemetery in this little village of Dansville, Michigan.
Hello everyone, it is nice to see you on this fall day in Dansville. My name is Simon P. Hendricks. In my day, I was a gunsmith in this town, but I'm getting ahead in my story. Let me go back to my beginning. I was born on July 4th, 1822 in Galen, Wayne County, New York. My parents were Peter and Abigail Castor Hendricks, who came to Michigan around 1839, and I lived there for 50 years. It was in Michigan where I met my wife, Mary Jane Bennett. She came to Michigan when she was 16 years old and lived in Washtenaw County. We were married October 12, 1843. Together we had 4 children, 3 of which are buried here. Our firstborn was a daughter, Charity, in 1845. She lived 15 years and died in 1860. You can see her headstone beside the family headstone. Next, our son Albert was born in 1847, but only lived a few years, dying in 1850. Then came another daughter, Rhoda, in 1857. Sadly, she only lived until 1859. Our last child, a son, Wells, was born in 1852 and lived a long life until 1930. Other documentation lists 2 other children, Wilmel, born in 1848, and Ella, who was born and died in 1860. For some reason, the last 2 children are not listed on the grave marker. In 1850, we lived in Hamburg, Livingston County, Michigan. I was a carpenter and a joiner. As a joiner, I made joined pieces of wood to make doors, windows, stairs, and furniture. Mary was busy caring for Charity, now 5, and Wilmel, 2 years old. Since we were living in Hamburg when Wilmel died, he is not buried with the family here in Fairview Cemetery. Mary's brother, Harry Bennett, aged 21, lived with us, and he was also a carpenter. It was about 1860 when Mary and I moved to Dansville along with our daughter Charity and son Wells. Our home was located on Jackson Street between South Street and Adams Street on the west side of the street. We had a large circle of friends, and I was well known in the vicinity. I joined the Independent Order of the Oddfellows, of which I was a member for 26 years. I worked as a carpenter and as a joiner here as well. I also worked as a gunsmith. As a gunsmith, I made many various types of firearms. I made variations as an over-under 44 caliber percussion cap on top and a 16-gauge shotgun on bottom. I even made a three burial variant with a rifle and shotgun. Today, there are at least 5 of my firearms known to be in existence today. 2 are located here in Dansville, 1 near Sturgis, Michigan, and 2 in other states. In 1863, the census report says Civil War draft. I was 41 years old, and I was a mechanic. You're probably wondering, what would a mechanic do in the Civil War? There was the 1st Regiment, Michigan Volunteer Engineers and Mechanics. This was one of 3 regiments that repaired and built railroads, bridges, and blockhouses. They also destroyed enemy communication lines, railroads, and bridges. Even though the census report states this information, researchers have yet to find if I served. In the 1880 census records, it says I was a gunsmith. It also states that I was sick with paralysis and living in Dansville with my wife. Sadly, on July 19, 1888, my dear wife of 45 years, Mary, passed away. After her passing, our only living child, Wells, had me move into Iron Mountain with him, in the Upper Peninsula to Liverton. I was only there for 7 months when I passed away from apoplexy or stroke. My body was brought back here to Dansville. My funeral service was held at the Methodist Episcopal Church here in town. Then I was laid to rest here in Fairview Cemetery next to my wife and children.
Hello, my friends and neighbors. For those of you who don't know, my name is James F. Lemon. I have been practicing medicine in our fine community of Dansville for many years now. I may have even brought a few of you into this world. As you may know, I was not born in Dansville. On January 28, 1854, I was born to my loving parents in Novi, Michigan. My father, the Reverend Joseph C. Lemon, was a highly respected Baptist minister of the gospel. He came from England, and my mother, Zilpha Caroline Skinner Lemon, came from New York. They were so happy when I was born. In 1860, we lived in the village of Pinckney. But when I and my brother were still small boys, we moved to Ann Arbor. I went to school in Ann Arbor and attended an exceptional high school there. Then I entered medical school at the University of Michigan, and I was graduated with honors in 1884. I am very proud of what I achieved, and I am so glad that my parents were still alive to witness my accomplishments. Even though my father passed away in 1888 when I was 34, and my mother passed away in 1889 when I was 45, I still missed them. In 1885, I married the love of my life, Miss Kitty Hatch of Dansville. She was born in 1857 to Ira Hatch and Elizabeth Anthony Hatch in Batavia, New York. They moved to Dansville when she was a small child. Kitty and I then moved to Hamburg, where I practiced until 1891. That's when we came to Dansville, where Kitty already had family. We lived in a large white house with a beautiful stained glass window in the middle of town. I recall the huge chestnut tree that stood in the yard, beautiful in springtime. Kitty and I were disappointed that we were never blessed with children, but our lives were still full. In 1910, we shared our home with Kitty's mother, Elizabeth, who was 90 years old at the time. She passed away in 1913. There were many doctors who practiced here in Dansville, but I'm the only one who stayed. So many nights I left my warm bed to drive miles in my horse and buggy to help the sick, but I was very glad I was able to help them. Medicine is not the only thing that keeps me busy, though. I'm a member of the Ingham County and State Board of Health. I served as secretary of the school board for 25 years, and I was the president of the village of Dansville for 7 years. I'm also a Freemason. I belong to the Odd Fellows and the Maccabees. My political leanings are with the GOP, and most importantly, I have kept up with the newest changes in medicine. But things changed quickly when my sweet wife, Kitty, died on August 27th, 1929, after a long illness. I was devastated, but my friends and community members supported me well during that time. When I turned 75 years of age in January 1930, everyone surprised me with a birthday party. I received over 170 cards. What an outpouring of love and support. I'm proud to say that I'm the oldest practicing physician in these parts. In fact, I attended the birth of Maxine Simon in 1926, and Dorothy Arts, daughter of Walt and Josie Walker Arts, in 1929. And on December 27, 1930, I signed a death certificate of Miss Emma Statford. I practiced medicine until December 1930 when I was taken ill with a severe cold. I'm in a quandary though. A few days after New Year's Day, January 5th to be exact, in 1931, I left this earth, only 15 months after my dear Kitty. But I'm not sure what illness I passed from. My obituary says I caught a severe cold which overcame me, but my death certificate says I died from sugar diabetes. No matter. The end result is still the same. I am now with my beloved wife, so thank you, Dansville, for helping me to live a meaningful and satisfying life here, healing the sick and serving my community.
Joining me at my resting place in Fairview Cemetery. My name is Frances Jane Thurston Rice. I was born on December 13, 1822 in Verona, Oneida County, New York. I was one of 12 children born to John and Hannah Tucker Thurston. My father was in the beginning of the War of 1812, but was discharged because of ill health. Upon my father's discharge, the family then moved to Michigan. We settled in Sumter, Michigan, which is west of Detroit. Then we moved to Ypsilanti in 1837. My future husband and Dansville businessman, Egbert Rice, was born October 3, 1821, in Warsaw, New York. He was the son of Chancey and Phoebe Giddings Rice. Phoebe went by the name of Betsy. I met Egbert Rice when we lived in Washtenaw County. We were married on April 4th, 1848, in Oakland, Monroe County, Michigan. While there, Egbert worked as a carpenter. We were in Ypsilanti in the 1850 to 1860 census. While we were married, we lived in many places and raised 5 children. We lived in Ypsilanti when our first daughter, Gertrude Olivia, was born in 1849. Unfortunately, in 1850, our little daughter had died as an infant. Our second daughter, Valletta Erzilia, was born in 1851 while we were living in Washtenaw County. Valletta married Francis Cobb and passed away in 1914. Our only son, Charles Myron, was born in Oakland County, 1859. He married Flora Ainsley and died at the age of 42 in 1901. Mina Bell, our third daughter, was born here in Dansville in 1866. William Danes was her husband. Mina Bell lived to be 72 years old, dying in 1938. Our youngest and last child, a daughter, arrived the year after Mina Bell. Our sweet Ella May was born in 1867, also in Dansville. She married Ernest Densmore of Dansville and lived until 1942, 75 years. It was in 1862 that we came to Dansville and purchased the general store owned by Henry Densmore. It was a wooden structure. Not happy with the wooden structure, in 1871, Egbert tore it down. Along with the help of Theodore Hoffman, they built the brick building on the corner of Mason and Jackson Streets. We reopened it as a general store, and for the next 25 years, Egbert was a prominent businessman in the area. The census lists Egbert as a dry goods merchant. The 1863 directory listed us as running the general store, and the one in 1888 listed Egbert as a banker and the general store owner. Our business didn't really change over those years. I guess just the terminology for our business changed with the times. There was a bank in the back of our store where my husband was the banker. While in Dansville, Egbert was not only a businessman, he also was an active community member. He served as village president and trustee and was also on the school board. Regretfully, Egbert died February 3, 1890, in Dansville at the age of 68. His cause of death was paralysis. After Egbert's death, our store continued. In 1869, the store was sold to our youngest daughter, Ella, and her husband, Ernest Densmore. Ernest was manager of his father-in-law's store until 1899. I died January 1st, 1902, here in Dansville at the age of 79. My cause of death was breakdown of the immune system and dropsy. For those who have not heard of the term dropsy, it is the old-fashioned word for congestive heart failure. I'm resting here alongside Egbert. Some of our children were laid to rest beside us. Our daughter Gertrude and son Charles are also buried here. Although their names are on the stone, they are buried elsewhere. Our other children are buried in the area. Ella is in Maple Grove and Mason. Valletta is buried in Benton Township Cemetery in Eaton County, and Mina is buried in Roselawn Cemetery in Perry with their husbands. Our brick general store lived on in this village after our family. Egbert's will of August 19, 1878 left Francis the brick store on the corner of Mason and Jackson Streets. It was then bequeathed to our daughter, Valletta Rice Cobb, after my death. The will was consented but was admitted to probate July 22, 1902. In 1903, Valletta Cobb sold the property to Cassius Young for $2,000. In 2019, the value would have been $57,449. Mr. Young ran and owned the C.M. Young Dry Goods Store. It included an ice cream parlor, dry goods, groceries, shoes and boots, hats and caps, wallpaper, window shades, millinery, seeds, field and garden. Anyone remember the west side of the building's painting store advertising his store? Mr. Young's store was in operation until 1937. Here's an interesting story about an event that happened at the Mr. Young store. There was also a bank in the back of the store. On April 1st, 1908, thieves broke in and blew the safe. However, the thieves did not count on the tracking snow that had fallen that day. A posse was formed and the tracks were fallen to a barn in White Oak Township where the thieves were hiding in the hay. Constable Charles Osborne arrested them, and the one and only bank robbery in Dansville was solved in 2 hours. That corner store at Jackson and Mason Streets had many other businesses in the brick building, including a drugstore, catalog, warehouse, Crossroads Inn restaurant, ice cream parlor, antique shop, and the saloon named the Wooden Nickel. In April of 2011, a fire started at the part of the Wooden Nickel around 3 a.m. The Dansville Fire Department was returning on M36 in the fog from a fire in Stockbridge. They could see the yellow glow even through the fog in the sky over their town. They arrived to see the brick building in flames. They were out of water because the Stockbridge fire had just left. They had to refill the tanker first. It took 18 agencies to control the blaze. All buildings in the block were burnt beyond repair. The brick building on the corner of Jackson and Mason Streets for 140 years was gone into history.